Once upon a time, nearly 2 decades ago, I was a bored Japanese teenager, like the ones you see in movies like Tokyo no Kyujitsu and Bounce Ko Gals. I had just reached a period of remission in my turbulent relationship with my father because I had started college and was no longer living with him. Like any other guy, I was mainly focused on trying to get laid. I wasn't very competent at this, for a few reasons. First, I was still quite depressed and, honestly, a bit depressing to be around. Second, I had zero confidence, and third, I had absolutely no idea how to be cool. One day, I went to a robotaiyaki where I met this gaijin named Scott. We made small talk for a while, and eventually, the conversation turned to girls and my struggle to meet them. Scott seemed surprised. Not able to get laid in Japan? How could that be? He told me he'd been having the time of his life since he arrived. I suggested maybe that was because he was a foreigner. He shrugged this off, saying it wasn't about that. He was just going to the right bars. He told me I should try Blue Babe and meet some of the women there. He said the chicks there were easy. This was my first encounter with a gaijin perspective on dating in Japan. Like the sucker I was, I fell for it. When you're not getting laid, you'll believe all kinds of stories. So, I went to Blue Babe, which, I'll note, is still in business in downtown Oita. It's as much of a dive now as it was then. The place played music by B.B. King, Muddy Waters, Buddy Guy, and other blues legends. The smoke-filled air was thick with bourbon-fueled Chicago macho vibes, and something like American redneckism. Later, I learned the bar was rumored to be a spot for grass dealers, and was on the police watch list. A regular customer went by. Keiji. I thought that was his name, but it turned out he was actually a Keiji, a cop, whose job was to keep an eye on the bar's crowd. However, his cover had been blown from day one. He'd busted a customer before, so he would just get drunk with the regulars and pocket his winnings from our occasional illegal blackjack games. I, a geeky, skinny med student in an uncool outfit, could not have been more out of place. I didn't get laid, but I did get attention. I was too shy to strike up a conversation with any of the women, but I didn't have to. "How'd a boy like you end up here?" asked a foxy Japanese woman. "Scott told me about it." "Scott? That jerk. A real dork. Total loser. Scott said this was a place where I could get laid." She tossed her head, a very sexy gesture. "He'd say that, I guess. I slept with him. But you just said he's a dork." "Yeah, but he's a gaijin." Even now, that would be a curious attitude. Back then, it was totally insane. "Who's the cute boy?" said another woman. I turned to see a slightly older lady, about 28, with full, exotic lips and long, wavy hair that wafted perfume with every movement of her head, sending shivers down my spine. "Just met him," said the first woman. "Friend of Scott's." "Scott? That loser? Did he sell you grass or something?" "I met him in a bar," I said apologetically. "Scott told him he could get laid here, Yoko," said the first woman. "The rude bastard," said Yoko. "Does he think we're easy? Just because we slept with him?" Yeah, you slept with him too?" I stammered. I was still a virgin, and here was this beautiful woman openly admitting to sleeping with a man she was calling a loser. "Yeah," said Yoko. "What else are gaijin for?" She thought this was hilarious, and she and her friend laughed. At that moment, I would have given anything to be a gaijin. Yoko and her friend explained that they were enlightened women. They weren't like the city girls who thought every gaijin was a Hollywood star. Some foreigners were nice, some were cute, some were dorks. They knew them all. They laughed at the city girls who thought having a foreign boyfriend was the ultimate prize. Any gaijin could be easily coaxed into bed, they said. The two women noticed I moved my eyebrows as I spoke, just like a gaijin. Japanese people don't usually move their eyebrows naturally, which is why some people think Asian expressions look blank. Eyebrow movement is something you pick up only if you spend time in the West. The women said I reminded them of Oscar the Grouch, something other girls would also tell me later, even though I don't look anything like him. From then on, I was Oscar, though my high school friends still called me Nobita, after the sulky character in Doraemon. After that, I sat and talked with Yoko for a while. She stroked my hair, whispered in my ear, and traced her finger along my face. I trembled at her closeness and her vibrant sexiness. My mind was in a tailspin. It was long past midnight, and my young, sex-starved mind was spiraling out of control. Then she told me she was married. "Where's your husband?" I asked. "Right there." She pointed 3 stools down to a handsome man deep in conversation with Keiji. "He's your husband?" "Sure. But don't worry, he's having fun on his own." I was beyond confused. This woman, who I was sure was seducing me, was just a few stools away from her husband. "So why don't you meet me on Monday when he's not around?" she said. Fine." My brain was no longer in control. "Bye," she said, and she left. I wish I could tell you I had a torrid affair with Yoko, but it never happened. The next Monday, I arrived a few minutes late, and she wasn't there. I waited a while, but something in my gut told me it was too good to be true, that I was making a fool of myself by waiting for a woman who'd never show. She did come, about an hour after I left. I made plans with her again, but kept missing her. This was before cell phones, so I couldn't call her at home. Not that it would have helped. Life is not like a movie. You could only grow out of your limitations gradually, and my joystick had a way of hijacking my brain's authority. After several missed attempts, I thought I'd exhausted my chances with her when I finally saw her again at Blue Babe, sitting next to her husband. He was engrossed in a card game with the bartender and barely noticed her. The moment I walked in, Yoko stood up, kissed her husband goodnight, and announced she was going home. As she passed by me, she took my hand in her cool fingers, then let her hand slip away from mine without pausing. Her perfume lingered in the air as she left. The gesture was so charged that I sat there, stunned, the feeling of her fingers slipping away more erotic than anything I'd experienced. Even after I eventually slept with other women, the memory of that moment persisted as my richest erotic experience. I sat there in a daze for the rest of the night, like a guy who just had a soul-rattling orgasm. It wasn't until days later that I realized she was signaling me to follow her. I still sometimes tear at my hair thinking about that last moment. Girls today dress better than they did 2 decades ago, and they're prettier overall. But none of them can hold a candle to Yoko. Not by a long shot.